Okay, now it started. So, okay, fine. So, let's look into the very basic fundamentals of nozzles and diffusers. See, what are these nozzles and diffusers? See, nozzles and diffusers are actually, they are the energy transferring device. Energy transferring devices. What is it actually? That means the fluid is flowing through it. The fluid is flowing through it. Actually, they try to transfer the energy. Okay. Now, if I take the nozzle, what will happen? So, if I take the nozzle, when the fluid is flowing inside it, it will try to accelerate. So, the fluid gets accelerate the fluid. That means actually what it is actually, it is the increase in my kinetic energy, that is your velocity gets increased. Okay, the velocity, the main objective of using a nozzle is to increase the kinetic energy when the fluid is flowing inside the cross section or inside the nozzle. Now when I come to the diffuser, what it is actually, when I come to the diffuser, it has to decelerate. The fluid has to, it is nothing but the decelerate the fluid. So there is a drop in my kinetic energy. So which means indirectly there is a drop in my velocity. So this is the basic fundamental of your nozzles and diffuser. So nozzle is used to accelerate the fluid so that there is an increase in kinetic energy. Diffuser is used to decelerate the fluid so there is a drop in kinetic energy. This is the basic device actually. These are the basic devices. Now what happens if I have a steam nozzle? How this particular expansion takes place? So when the fluid expands, if I have a nozzle, the fluid expands, what type of fluid I may have? If it is a steam nozzle, so usually in steam turbine, the fluid at the entry will be either it will be saturated or much higher than that actually, it will be super saturated or superheated steam, what we call. So when I speak of superheated steam, so what will be the critical pressure? It is 220 bar, and critical temperature it's around 374 degrees Celsius. So you look at the dome. Say when I try to put the HS diagram. So if I try to look at the HS diagram, it's something like this. So I have an HS diagram. I draw an HS diagram. Okay. So I do have a dome. So we have a dome something like this, and at this critical point, okay, at this critical point, this is my critical point. I have the critical pressure and I have the critical temperature. So your critical pressure is 220 bar and your critical temperature is 374 degree Celsius. So this is my values, critical. So now what will happen when I have this particular fluid is expanding in a nozzle? So when a nozzle, especially steam nozzle, when I speak of steam nozzle, so it expands, okay, expands from a high pressure to low pressure. So how this particular thing? If I try to draw the isotherm, see how the isotherms will be going on this particular HS diagram. So this is my enthalpy and this is my entropy. How the isotherms will be looking at actually, how the isotherms will be, see they will be coming like this, okay, and it is a saturation, this thing, it will be a straight line, then they'll be going something like this. So similarly, I can have one more isotherm like this, and this is how it will be going. So similarly, I will be having isotherm which will be flowing through the, which will be passing through the critical point. That is, it will be like a bow shape. This is how it is actually. So this is your critical isotherm. Critical isotherm. Okay. And if I try to look at actually this side, I'll be having the liquid. Here I'll be having liquid plus gas, that is a steam. So this side it is completely gaseous form, that is vapor. Let me call it as vapor rather than using the gas. Let me use vapor. So liquid, this will be vapor. This side it is completely vapor. To the right side of it, when I speak of vapor, it is completely superrated. And this is your dry saturation line, dry saturation line, and this is your liquid line. So this you might have studied in your applied thermodynamics when you're dealing with either power cycles or maybe steam power cycles or your maybe pure substances. So this is how it is. So when I speak of nozzles, the nozzle will be expanding something like this. So usually your nozzle entry pressure and temperature will be much higher than your critical pressure and critical temperature. So if I take any high pressure steam nozzles in an actual power plant. So the working pressure may be around 400 bar or 500 bar with a temperature of 700 degrees Celsius or 800 degrees Celsius. So which is much than your this thing. So in that case, what will happen? Your isotherm will be much above your critical point. That means your steam expands from a superheated condition. Then it comes to a condition where it becomes dry saturated. Then it becomes the maybe it may be something like a liquid. There may be there may be a little bit of dryness fraction at the exit of it. So why we expect a steam to be at superheated condition entering the turbine is actually at the exit we want it to be as dry as possible. Otherwise, what will happen if the dryness fraction is drops below zero point 0.9 or 0.95? Okay, there is a formation of water bubbles, and this water bubbles will will cause what is called as a pitting on the gas turbine or your steam turbine blades, and that will erode your blades actually, and it may be catastrophic also. So these kind of things we have to maybe we have to avoid in case of a steam nozzles. So we try to take or we will have the steam entering the nozzle as well as your turbine much higher than your much higher than your dry saturated condition, that is very high superheated conditions, very high pressure and high temperature below maybe it is above your critical value. Okay, this is a very basic funda what it is actually. Now when you come to classification or what we call it as a types of nozzles. Okay, when you speak of types of nozzles, types of nozzles, what are the different types of nozzles? So if you look at it in maybe with respect to the geometry, with respect to the geometry, so we have three types. One is converging, okay, and the second one is diverging, and the third one is converging and then diverging. So this is called as CD nozzle. Okay. Now, if I try to draw the cross section, how it is actually, if this is my axis, okay. So converging nozzle means it converges from a higher cross sectional diameter to a lower cross sectional diameter. So this is a converging nozzle. So the fluid is entering at higher cross section area and it exits at lower cross section. This is a converging nozzle. But here also, what it is actually, the fluid is getting accelerated. So don't get confused the diverging nozzle with respect to diffuser. So even in a diverging nozzle also, it is designed in such a way that the fluid is getting accelerated. Okay, this is my diverging nozzle. So diverging nozzle, what will happen? You have a lower cross section area at the entrance, and at the exit, it will be slightly bigger than your entry. So the fluid is entering like this, exiting. Here also there is an increase in the velocity. So what about the CD nozzle? Okay, the CD nozzle is something like this. So it will have a lower portion of what we call it as a converging portion. Okay, converging portion is always this thing. Then depending upon what type of pressure you need, actually, we will go for diverging portion. So diverging portion, so this is a CD nozzle. Here also the velocity gets excited. So this is my converging portion and this is my diverging portion. So converging and diverging. So with respect to the geometry, so we have three classifications: converging, diverging and converging diverging. Now depending upon the direction of the fluid, okay, now direction of the fluid actually, so it is axial, okay. So depending upon the direction of the fluid, the second classification we can have, so this is the first classification which is based on the geometry, okay, geometry. The second one is depending upon the direction of the fluid flow, direction of the fluid flow. So now, so most of the, if you look at it actually, if you look at this particular first one actually, all are in the axial direction. At the same time, it looks like more of like a conical. Conical means what actually? It's more of like they look like a cone. Okay. The first classification I can take here is actually it is conical. Okay. Then the second type of classification I can have is annular. Annular means what will happen? Just like a branch of a tree, they gets diverged. And very rarely used the fluid flow direction, we have the radial one. Okay. If you want to look at how the conical this thing, I can draw any of the converging, diverging or converging, diverging nozzle. Any one of the thing I can tell. So they all belong to the conical type of nozzle. So let me put maybe a converging nozzle itself. So this is my converging nozzle. So they look almost like everything. So this is a conical one. Just look like a cone. So fluid enters here, fluid exits here, and it's insulated. So you have to remember that your nozzles are always insulated. Okay, this is like a cone. So that's why these nozzles are called as conical or conical nozzles. Now, what is this annular? Annular means having some kind of a branch. Say, so have a axis something like this. So there is one branch. See, there is one branch will go in the top direction. Just I'll show some two branches, and another branch will go something like this. So one more branch can go like this. So I can have one more branch something like this. Okay, and there may be one more branch something like this, and this is it actually. So this is an axis for this branch, and so what will happen here? This is an annular kind of a thing. So this is insulated. So this is insulated. Everything is insulated. The casing is insulated. So fluid will enter like this, and it gets to one branch. Fluid enters here. This thing. So this is an annular kind of your nozzle. And there is one more very rarely used actually. Suppose if I have a radial kind of a machine. So that's something like I have an axis like this, and so there is an
Uh, Sir,
hub,
uh,
okay, and there is a
can we take
static kind of thing.
flow on the
That
wedge
means,
as
yeah,
annular?
which edge? This edge, no, the flow is nothing but annular means actually what will happen? It is
No,
something
no, sir.
like
For
it's
example, can we take flow or a wedge as annular?
no flow over a, it's not flow over a wedge actually. This annular means it's how it is getting branched. Flow over a wedge can never be taken as an annular. It is nothing but flow over a wedge is always it's a sharp. Okay, flow over edge is
Okay,
nothing
sir.
but you are trying. See, flow over edge is actually, see here what you should have a conduit. See, to call this as an annular, you should have a conduit. So the here what's happening? It is getting branched. That is one nozzle. I'm trying to divide it into two or three. So we call that as an annular kind of a thing. All are circular cross section. See, this is also circular cross section. This is also circular cross section. So those circular cross sections are getting branched. So we call such type of nodules as annular. And what we see on the wedge, actually, what we'll have is a wedge is a very something like a bluff body or something like an object which is coming as an obstruction in your fluid flow. And I don't have any annulus to it, actually. So usually flow over wedge is external flow. And this is an internal flow. Is that clear?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So when you speak of a radial one, it's more of like a turbine. So here what we have is actually we will be having something called as some kind of an direction giving guide means some kind of a direction is given so that the fluid accelerates in the radial direction, that is in the R direction. If this is my R, so in the radial direction. And very rarely we see this, maybe we can see this radial nozzles somewhere in the some kind of a rockets or some kind of a maybe space shuttle. Or this kind of radial nozzles have been used to accelerate the fluid, or to maybe some kind of a thrust vectoring you might have heard of, actually. So thrust vectoring, so there that's completely different topic. Thrust vectoring completely different topic. But if you have a nozzles maybe in that particular fashion where the fluid is exiting in that annulus or the radial direction, we call such things as radial nozzles. So thrust vectoring is something like going to have some kind of an aperture and you are trying to take the fluid in that particular direction. So I get so maybe the movement of that particular nozzle or the whole aircraft in the opposite direction of it. Okay, radial direction means I will be having the fluid is taken out in the radial direction. That's it. Okay. Then, depending upon the nature of flow. So third one, depending upon the nature of the flow. So nature of the flow means it is the exit velocity. It is the exit velocity. So we go with the first one as already you studied in your gas dynamics. We have the subsonic, where your Mach number is less than maybe roughly around 0.3 or 0.4, whatever it may be. Okay, subsonic. Then we have the sonic nozzles. So where your M is nearer to 1. Okay, it's 1 actually, 0.95 or point something to 1 or 1.1. We call that as a sonic. You can go up to 1.2 also. Then C, it is supersonic. So supersonic, your Mach number should be greater than 1.2 or something. And maybe beyond that, if Mach number is more than 2.5 and all, we can go up to hypersonic. Hypersonic steam nozzles, very rarely used, but we can see hypersonic, maybe gas turbine nozzles. So where you have your Mach number greater than your 2.5. So we can see the hypersonic nozzles. Okay. So simple classification of the nozzles actually based on geometry, based on the direction of the fluid flow, based on the nature of flow. So these are the three simple classifications what we can have. Okay. So whenever we speak of nozzles actually, so we always look at some important terms actually from the fluid mechanics perspective. Okay. So one such term is actually equation of continuity. Okay. So important term what we studied from the fluid mechanics thing. So one is the equation of continuity. Equation of continuity, that is, so mass flow rate is equal to rho into A into velocity. Okay. If I try to write it in a differential form, okay, this will be d dot m is equal to d of rho A V. Okay. Now, see what is the change in velocity? See dV by V, dA by D, dA by A, or d rho by rho. Look at it. So if I try to look at this particular quantity, only the right hand side, if I try to look at it, if I try to write it in terms of differential this thing, So what is the change in your velocity, okay, with respect to your V? And then what is your change in cross-sectional area? Okay, but when you look at it, your change in density to your original density, what we have, what are the changes? This density is almost negligible or constant. So that's the only thing which when we try to look at the fluid flow in the nozzle, so there can be change in velocity because the velocity will accelerate from inlet to exit, and cross section area is also changing from inlet to exit. But the density changes are, say it may enter at some 1.1 maybe, or maybe if it is a steam or something, they may at a higher density, and maybe steam turbine, so it enters at, oh, the changes in their density may be very very small. So that you have to be very, there may be a little bit of changes in the density, but majority of the times actually when you try to expand, because we expand or we try to expand the steam turbines, so in expansion in steam turbines at superheated condition, maybe at the exit of your nozzle also it will be still in superheated condition. So changes in the density will be very very negligible. Okay, fine. So we'll go back to your basic thermodynamics. So let's try to analyze your nozzle using steady flow energy equation. Okay, steady flow energy equation in a for a nozzle. Steady flow, steady flow energy equation of a nozzle. What is this actually? Let us try to write the nozzle. Okay, so this is my nozzle here. Let me put a converging nozzle. Okay. It has a higher cross-section area at the inlet. And it is converging to a lower cross-section area. And it is insulated. It is insulated. So the heat loss is negligible. Okay. So that means, so here, what are the two types of interactions what you have studied in your thermodynamics? It's a work interaction and heat interaction. In a nozzle, work interaction is also zero and heat interaction is also zero. And this is my inlet and this is my exit. So let me call this as inlet as 1 cross section and exit as 2. If you want, you can put IR, ES exit also. So let's have some reference actually. So if I call this as some reference or datum, okay, so this is my datum. So inlet will be at a distance on V at a height of Z1 and exit is also at the height of Z2. If it is horizontal nozzle, Z1 is equal to Z2. That is low kinetic energy. This is what actually. Now, what is the generalized SFE equation? So go back to your basic thermodynamics. So we'll recall that. So generalized I'm not going to derive SFE, I'm going to use it. Generalized steady flow energy equation, okay, is given by, okay, we have the first heat loss plus mass flow rate into P1 V1, that is I am trying to write at the inlet P1 V1 plus U1 plus your kinetic energy, that is V1 square by 2 plus G into Z1. Okay, and at the exit it is actually, this is m dot into P2 V2 plus U2 plus V2 square by 2 plus G into Z2 plus your work done. Now I told that in a nozzle, if it is insulated, your heat loss is 0. And nozzle is not a work producing device, so your W is 0. And your Z1 and Z2 both are same. It's because it's an horizontal nozzle, so your GZ1 and GZ2 are 0. Okay. Now at the same time, what is this quantity? This quantity. So we know that we have defined enthalpy. See, H is equal to U plus PV or PV plus U, whatever it may be. So H is equal to, we have defined PV plus U. So this is your enthalpy. This is your enthalpy. Okay. Now this being a steady flow condition. Okay. If I take mass flow rate remains constant. So M dot remains constant throughout the nozzle because it's a steady flow. Because this is the reason is a steady flow condition. Okay. Now I'm going to replace P1 V1 plus U1 by H1 and P2 V2 plus U2 by H2 and rewrite the equation. So what will happen to this equation? So the equation I can write it as M dot into, okay, H1 plus V1 square by 2, which is equal to M dot into H2 plus V2 square by 2. Okay. Now, what exactly we are trying to look in a nozzle? We are trying to look at the what is the exit velocity or what is the acceleration in the nozzle. So we'll try to write this equation in terms of velocity. So anyhow, mass flow rate, just simply they cancel out, either side it is the same. They simply cancel out. What is left out actually? So I need to write V2 square by 2 is equal to, so if I write it, this will be H1 minus H2 plus V1 square by 2. Okay, if I call this as maybe equation 1, so this as equation number 1, I can call this as equation number 2. Now, so what is this actually? H1 minus H2. So H1 minus H2. What is H1 minus H2? This is the enthalpy of expansion. Enthalpy of expansion. Or to be very precise, this is your heat drop or enthalpy drop, what you have studied in your applied thermodynamics. Heat drop or enthalpy of expansion, whatever, all the names are same. So Cp into, you might have used the Cp into T1 minus T2. Okay, Cp into, or you directly you take the H value and H value from your molar diagram. You take the H1 value, you take the H2 value, take the difference of it, that gives directly the heat drop. So that's how we try to calculate. Now, if I want only V2 square, or if I want only V, so this equation I can, so V2 square is equal to 2, I will take it to the other side. This will be 2 into H1 minus H2 plus V1 square. Okay. Or your V2 is equal to square root of 2 into H1 minus H2 plus V1 square. So this is your equation. This is your equation for your exit velocity. Okay. Many times what will happen? Many times or majority of the times, your exit velocity is much greater than your inlet velocity. Okay. If, so I have the condition. So that is the equation. 3 is the equation for it. If my exit velocity is much greater than your V1, okay, then your equation 3 becomes, what do you mean by it actually? Suppose your exit velocity is 300 meters per second and your inlet velocity is 5 meters per second. So comparatively, your inlet velocity is smaller than your exit velocity. That's the meaning of it. Nothing, there is no meaning. There is, don't think of otherwise. Okay. That means this equation 3 I can write it as your V2 is equal to square root of only 2 into H1 minus H2. And you have to be careful here. See, here most of the times what we try to do when you are doing the numericals, see this H1, H2 value, what you get it from your steam tables or from your Molar diagram, your H is in kilojoules per kg. So when you are getting velocity, what is the unit for velocity? The unit for velocity is meters per second. So what we have to do actually, we need to write this as V2 is equal to square root of 2 into 10 to the power of 3 into H1 minus H2. So this is, we have to keep this value. So this should be in joules per kg. Okay, then only you will be getting your velocity in meters per second. Now just take the velocity. So square root of 2000. Simply you take the square root of 2000. This will become, so if I take it outside, this will be 44.72, okay, into root of H1 minus H2. Or if I want to substitute for, we know that H is equal to Cp into T. Because U is, I say, we know that U is equal to Cv into T. This you might have studied in your basic thermodynamics. H is Cc, H is H is a function of, see, H is proportional to temperature, U is also proportional to temperature. And H is greater than U. Why it is? Because Cp is greater than your Cv. So all these things you might have studied in your basic thermodynamics. So here what I can do is actually, I can write your V2 is equal to 44.72 square root of Cp into T1 minus T2. So this is your equation 4. So this is your equation 4. So now, if I try to look into this particular thing, so this is the expression for exit velocity from your steady flow energy equation. So V2 is equal to 44.72 square root of difference in your enthalpy. That is inlet enthalpy and exit enthalpy, if you are able to get it. Or if you are able to get the temperatures. So this is T1 minus T2, doesn't matter whether the values are in Kelvin or in degree Celsius. If would have been only value Cp into T means the T should be in absolute value. So it's always better to convert all the temperatures uniformly to maintain the uniformity. So we need to always have this particular temperatures in Kelvin itself. Even though in the numericals it is given in terms of degree Celsius, we'll stick on to having these values at